Hi friends. This week I'm sitting down with Ed Latimore. He's an ex-professional boxer who's also a physicist. It's not the most typical combination of characteristics that you're going to find. He's a very interesting guy. Ed and me spoke an awful lot about sobriety, alcohol's indoctrination into modern society and how it negatively affects a lot of people's lives without them really even noticing it. We also move on to his strategies for being incredibly successful on Twitter, which will be very useful to those of you that are looking to grow your social media followings as we move into the new year. Other than that, I just found him an incredibly charming and very likable guy. He's obviously got a big message that he wants to get across, and it's nice to hear someone who's also singing from the same hymn sheet of sobriety as myself. As always, please share the episode with a friend if you think that they would enjoy it. And I wanted to give a special thank you to everyone that helped share the episode for Relationships 103. So we landed in the top 40 worldwide on the Apple podcast chart, which is ridiculous. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. Here is Mr. Ed Latimore. Ed Latimore, how are you today, sir?
I'm fantastic, man. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So, an ex-professional boxer who's also a physicist. That's not a combination that you hear every day.
Yeah, these things just kind of happen. I didn't plan. I wish I could look back, and go, oh man, 6 years ago this was the plan. But no, it really just kind of grew and developed as a result of me taking and putting just one foot in front of the other. I didn't really know exactly where I was going, but I knew where I was leaving, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally understand. So, I mean, you've got a super interesting story. As you say, those two interests don't often mix. So would you be able to give the listeners some background to yourself and tell us your story, how you went from wherever you came from to where you are now?
Oh, yeah, no problem. So I'll give you the abridged version, and by abridged I mean the version that starts roughly around age 26, 27. I was a pretty good amateur boxer, and as I started inching closer, I was like, okay, I need to make sure I got something else to fall back on, because I started to really see, the higher up you get and the closer you go to being professional, you get to see kind of what the professional ranks are like, business and athletics wise. Plus I was fortunate in the position I was in that I was getting sponsored and paid pretty well, but by some pretty powerful people. So I got to see that, and I said, all right, I need a backup. And I kind of put that on the back burner for a little bit and I got cut from the program, and I moved back to where I lived. I lived in Los Angeles in the United States, and then I moved back to Pittsburgh, and I was working for a while and going out partying every night and just really being a fool and kind of ignoring the fact that I didn't have any real way to make money other than just showing up and pimping out my time to a customer service rep or as a customer service rep. So I woke up, I said, you know what? I'm going to join the Army, and they're going to pay for school. And that's what happened. And along the way, I spent 22 weeks away from everyone because of basic training and AIT. I joined the National Guard version of the military, or the National Guard division. And when I was there, I realized also that I had developed a problem with alcohol because I wasn't around drinking for that long, and I got to really sit and think alone. There wasn't a lot going on in my mind, just what was around me. And so I said, this is crazy. So I think I got out. I went out and celebrated one time, got totally shit-faced, and I said, this is not how I want to go, and this is not how I want life to be. So I got sober then. I joined school. But when I enlisted, I was 3-0 as a professional, and then I got out and I just kept going. I was originally going to become an engineer, and I took my first physics class, and I said, I really want to study this, not engineering. And that's how how it happened. And I was fighting and going to school and in the military all at the same time. And looking back at it now, I have no idea how I got all the energy
I was going to
to
say,
do
I mean,
that.
that's an awful lot to pack into a day.
Oh, then, my days, I remember, I mean, there was a period of time, and I'm really grateful because I have a great, great girlfriend, and she really helped out a lot. But there was a period of time. I mean, for at least a year, maybe. I know it happened obviously because I'm here, but it was all a blur because it was wake up, go practice, go to school, come back, or get out of school, go practice some more, come back, work on the homework because physics is not some slouch subject. There was a lot of studying and homework I had to do, and then some weekends I had to go do military things, so I didn't have that time either. And then I was exhausted all the way through. And then I'm still trying to be like a reasonable social person, you know. So life was just busy, man.
That's one way to put it. That's definitely busy. So was there a specific turning point where you realized, obviously you'd mentioned that a period of isolation away from perhaps access to alcohol and then whatever the influences were that were encouraging you to party as well, that had highlighted that you maybe had a problem with substances. Was there an aha moment, or was it a gradual oncoming and a gradual onset of realization?
Well, in terms of a specific aha moment, I mean, there were quite a few. I mean, and if you want to talk like real aha moments, I had a real aha moment like 2 years before I stopped drinking. It was just me being in denial for a long time. And what really did it, what made me finally quit, it wasn't like I was like, oh man, I'm in rock bottom, I gotta bounce up. It was having a goal. I said, okay, I'm now in the United States military, so now I'm subject to their judicial system and the civilian judicial. I'm trying to finish my degree and go back to school so I can make sure I have a better way to live. My professional career is developing, and I had just, really started dating my girlfriend, who I saw a lot of potential in, and unfortunately, I was right. I mean, she's still around today, and we're happier than ever. And all of these things, I looked at how far I could go with them, and I knew that the thing that would keep me back was really the only thing that had kept me from making moves in my life before, and that was alcohol. So it was very easy for me to for me to see that had to go. And I was really fortunate too because I had all of that going on. I didn't really feel the effects of not drinking per se,
Mm-hmm.
because the biggest thing is I've found talking to people is developing a new life and a new identity independent of alcohol. I mean, obviously there is a point to which you're physically dependent on a substance, but it's been my experience and my observation that a lot of us, we fall into the lifestyle and then we miss that. We don't know how to define ourselves. We don't know how to deal with life without booze. And for a while, I mean, I think that was a thing that I thought about quite a bit, but I also said, okay, I got other tasks I got to do. So I didn't even really have, there wasn't time to waste blowing off steam. I was still in that whole like, I don't want to know. I mean, not really in that whole like new relationship phase, but I was really committed to my girl, so I wasn't trying to go out and chase women and anything like that. And so
Yeah.
all of these things kind of kept me away. I had enough things pulling me in another direction that I wasn't. That there was no way to fall back in for at least for the first 2 years, maybe three. Really, I'm coming up on year 5 this December, and or rather, I guess in under a month it'll be 5 years sober. And I I know that I didn't. I was fortunate. I mean, I did what I recommend everyone else do, but I did it on accident. I filled my time with so many things different than alcohol, and it forced me to develop a different life. So I would say my transition off was relatively smooth, but I know a lot of guys aren't like that because they miss a life, they miss a purpose, they miss a way to fill themselves. And I was trying to build a new me, and I was balls deep into a lot of new stuff, man. Like,
Yeah, I get that completely. I think an awful lot of people's reasons for drinking are they're habitual and idiosyncratic rather than dependent, at least in the beginning. And then as you've alluded to there, the dependency, the physiological requirement for your body to have the alcohol and to keep it going almost comes, that's the second wave effect, which
yeah,
which oddly is even tougher to break. But then when you layer on top the fact that that is your life, this is the way that you operate, this is the friendship circles that you've got and the community and what you're used to doing and the places you go and the people you see, when that is all hooked around a substance which you're also dependent on, I mean, it's no real surprise that people struggle to get themselves clean from alcohol, I don't think.
oh, for sure. And on top of that, man, we have a very alcohol. I wish I could just say alcohol friendly, right, society, but we have. I'm not full blown conspiracy on this.
The tinfoil hats aren't out just yet.
but we really have a culture that promotes excessive drinking for teenagers and young adults, and that's a really formative time because that's where everyone is building friendships and really trying to develop the idea of who they are. And so when we intertwine such heavy drinking in that phase, I mean, to make it part of your life from 18 to 24 easily just by default, you have to try to avoid it at that point. And most people just aren't up for it. They want to socialize, they want to have a good time, but they don't realize how out of control it really can get.
So I could not agree more. I've got a couple of stories. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on them. So the first story is that I did my master's dissertation at Newcastle University in the UK, and my dissertation title was The Effectiveness of Anti-Alcohol Advertising on Students at Newcastle University. And the crux of the synopsis of what I discovered was that there's pretty much nothing which effectively reduces drinking for students. That these terrible stories after a night out are worn like badges of honor.
My goodness. I have a whole section in my upcoming book where I talk about that, where you are treated as a goddamn hero.
Absolutely.
For being a fool.
Well, if let's say that me and you are catching up next week and I've gone on a night out and you go, so Chris, how was your night out? And I'm like, Ed, man, honestly, it was unbelievable. Jonathan ended up in hospital. He's lost an eye. And you're like, oh man, that's so sick. And you're like, in no other scenario would this be somehow worn as a badge of honor, but it's a rite of passage for young people to go through this excessive drinking phase. And then, you can look to films like The Hangover, where this drinking to excess, the memory loss, the amnesia, all that sort of stuff, it's totally glorified. And the problem is that because it's so well established within our society, it's impossible for people to imagine that things could be another way. So this leads me on to the second part of the story, which I'd love to hear your thoughts on. So recently I was doing doing a casting for a TV show in the UK. As a part of that, they asked me for a lot of background information, from what was your relationship like with your parents, to where did you go to school, what did you like doing when you were growing up, what sort of girls do you like, and blah, blah, blah. And I told them about everything, was as transparent as I was prepared to be. And mentioned, I like to do stints of sobriety. I've been sober for about 3 months now. I did 6 months at the start of this year. I did 6 months at the start of next year. And I'm currently doing 18 months. I like it as a tool for productivity, etc., etc. And she goes away, rings me back in a couple of weeks and says, the producers would really like to see you in London, but they've asked me to ask you a question before we bring you down. I'm really sorry. I don't want you to get offended by this, but they've asked me to ask you, and they've asked me to be very specific about the way that I bring it up as well. I'm like, okay. I mean, is this, has one of my ex-girlfriends got in touch, or, like what have they got on me here? So she says, look, I need to ask you this outright. So they've brought up the sobriety thing, and they've asked me to ask you about whether or not you've ever had a problem with substances or a dependence on alcohol. And I started laughing down the phone, and she was like, why are you laughing? I was like, well, firstly, I can tell you I've never had a dependence on alcohol. I'm not a massive drinker, although I binge hard when I party, as a lot of us do. But what's funny is that TV executives at one of the UK's biggest television stations cannot imagine a world in which someone would elect to not drink without having a dependence on the substance.
It's like the old saying, right? Alcohol is the only drug where if you don't do it, people assume you have a problem. And nowhere else does that ring true. And really, sometimes I think about that, like how bad, was it? I mean, I think my behavior was terrible. I do think that. But in terms of I was never like, oh man, I gotta drink today. It just really turned into a habit that was difficult to break, and then I started to build a lifestyle around said habit. So for all intents and purposes, I mean, sure, maybe I didn't have to think about it, but I was putting myself in a position to not have to think about it, so I could just go drink whenever I want and drink as much as I want. I bring that up because I wondered sometimes, did I have a problem, or was it just easier to say that to move into the next phase, right? To go, okay, let's treat this like it's a real big deal and attack it as such, and it'll get people to kind of look and go, because I find this out when I say there are two things you can say, right? And people have a very different reaction, though it says the exact same thing. You can say, I'm not drinking tonight, or I'm sober. And people question the first one. They tend to give you a bit of a nod of agreement on the second one. In fact, I usually get congratulations, which is weird.
Yeah.
But we really have this culture, man. Like, people don't have an alternative, because I really, there's no vested interest in showing people an alternative. I mean, I crunch numbers for a chapter that I'm not going to include in my book, because I don't want people. We live in a climate where you can't say a lot of things, and you'll see where I'm going with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want that to be the focus of the book, that particular passage, because I know somebody will rip it to shreds and go for the jugular on it. But I crunched the numbers on alcohol abuse and its correlation with sexual assault, and alcohol abuse and the income that universities receive selling it at football games, wherever, right? And it's not, on the latter, it's not that great. I was really surprised by that, actually, mostly because they go out of their way. The law enforcement kind of gets involved, but on campus, it is very easy to get alcohol. And now I know over there in the UK, the drinking age is different, and this is not an issue. But in the United States, many college towns and college campuses, there's a liquor store or a place to buy liquor on every corner, and you got to run. I've seen so many places shut down throughout the years right here in Pittsburgh alone for serving underage and eventually getting caught, because there's just too much money involved. I mean, you don't want to leave that alone. To the other fact, right? It was rough analysis, and I'm a physics guy, so my math isn't bad. It just wasn't as rigorous as I'd have to make it to hold up in an official publication. But I figured out that if you eliminated the role of alcohol, if you eliminate alcohol from the equation, right, that you would effectively eliminate, and when I say effectively eliminate, reduce to below 90% or below 10%, the amount of sexual assaults on women in the ages of 18 to 24, the college age group. And no one wants to discuss that, because the minute you say that, you get the counter argument, you should just tell guys not to do this, this, that, the other. And I'm like, look, I don't think any guy is walking around thinking, or rather, I will say, if we were to break it down statistically, like 1 in 500,000, maybe 1 in 1 million guys are walking around going, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get her drunk and rape her. Like, I don't think guys are thinking that. What I think happens is that alcohol is supposed to cloud your judgment. We've got tons of studies that alcohol ruins your ability to read and interpret cues that you would normally pick up when you're sober, and it ruins and likewise it ruins your ability to put out the proper cues that you would when you were sober. And you get two people together in the sexual prime of their lives, and they're 18 and 24, and you mix in a bunch of alcohol, and that's just that's a powder keg. And we see these things happen year after year after year. It's to the point whenever I hear of an assault on campus, my first thought is, well, how much were they drinking?
I wonder how much alcohol they had in the system. Yeah, absolutely.
And then it always comes out that it was at some kind of party or something wild. And you can't. It's crazy that you can't talk about that, and that would make a difference. Like, if these people were really concerned about the safety of their children, the safety of their daughters, they would be all over that issue. But we were so trained to not talk about, or rather, we're so trained to place a victim and place a blame on a thing that we can assign like a gender in these wars.
Well, you can personify a person a lot easier than you can personify alcohol. And I think what people are looking for in these situations is they're looking for the archetypal roles, the villain, the maiden, the redeemed, etc., etc. They want to be able to personify. I recently went to go and see Jordan Peterson live, and he spoke about this personification of objects within culture. And, why does Thomas the Tank Engine have a face? Like, he's a tank engine. He doesn't need a face. He doesn't need a face. Doesn't need a name. But he kind of does, because we need to know what sort of a person Thomas is, despite him obviously not being a fucking person. Like, he's a tank engine. But the same with this. We need, in news stories, there needs to be this personification. And you're totally right with what you say, that I think the main problem is that we can't, it's the wood hiding amongst the trees with regards to this alcohol problem.
Right. It's funny that the title of the chapter was "The Drunk Elephant in the Living Room." and I decided that I don't want to put it in because I don't want people to miss the other things that I'm trying to talk about and offer to people, a way to look at their behavior and, get through the emotional distress, I think, of sobriety, because that was very surprising.
Yeah, that is, it's harrowing that that's the case, but we've all been there. We've all been in a situation where we've had too much to drink, and our judgment has been skewed, and we've made a mistake. Now, very few of those situations will result in a sexual assault, but, it could have occurred. You've maybe lost your temper at a kebab guy, or you've walked out of McDonald's without paying, or you've stepped out into the road when you weren't looking, but there wasn't any cars coming, or maybe there was some cars coming. Do you know what I mean? Like, all of these situations are lapses in judgment, and the reason that they occur and that you continue to drink to excess is because for every drink that you have, it makes not having a subsequent drink more difficult. Alcohol is an inhibition reduction echo chamber, as far as I'm concerned, like a Bayesian updating gone wrong, if that makes sense.
No, that's brilliant. No,
to put it into the physicist's vernacular there for you.
No, I totally agree. And until we can have that conversation, and I'm not completely giving up on humanity, but I do understand, and I'm not blind to the fact that there is very clearly a very real agenda, and it's hurting people. It's not helping. It's hurting. Now, I tell people all the time, I'm not anti-alcohol. What I am is I'm anti. It's ritual recklessness, man. Like, it's just stupid, man. We drink to excess, and celebrate it. I think about all the times that I'm just lucky to be here. I just wrote in my email I sent out to my email list today that in another universe, the coin landed on another side, and I'm doing multiple jail sentences, and my name. And I'm lucky. That's all I am, is lucky.
Absolutely.
And not everyone else is going to be so lucky. And as long as we rely on who's here to teach people how to drink responsibly? Because we've created this culture where you got to sneak and get drinks, and then you want to be crazy and bad with it, and then the people who don't drink are treated like outcasts, and most humans are not equipped mentally or emotionally to deal with that, so they cave, and then they want to fit in, and it's a spiral of ridiculousness that isn't going anywhere. Which is one more reason that the university system needs to die, but it's a secondary one.
Well, I think it's interesting to talk about the fact that there are these unseen consequences, so to speak. And one of the problems I had, so my background, I'm a club promoter. I run club nights. You know, I've had probably near to 1 million people come through the events that I've run in the last 12 years or so with my business partner. So you could argue that I'm at the tip of the spear when it comes to delivering this rhetoric to students. But never once in any of the marketing promotions that we put out have we said to drink to excess. We're very, very careful, and licensing are also very careful of keeping a watch on what it is that we communicate to these students. So where is this rhetoric of excessive drinking coming from?
Oh, it's just here's what I'm not sure about. I don't want to speak for the rest of the world, but I do understand that a lot of the, for lack of a better phrase, the degeneracy norms are common in the UK and the United States right now.
Hey.
So as far as this excess goes, I think it's a derivative of our consumerism, our consumerist mindset. We're very much about more, and not just more, but more on display. You know, a lot of these kids don't sit in their dorm rooms and kill a 6-pack alone, right? They go out and they do it with a bunch of other people is part of an acceptance ritual. And a lot of that comes from us being, I would argue, not trained very well at connecting with other people as well. So it's really a perfect storm. I think, one, we have this incredible display culture, and we have tribalism. We want to fit in. We don't want to feel alone.
Yeah.
Alcohol started as a way to do that, and then it just evolved. You know, people keep trying to outdo one another, to where now every frat has some kind of binge ritual, and then that spills out into the mainstream. We got money involved, so now there is. You know, you can't come right out and say, go drink a lot and then drink some more. You can't come right out and say that. But that just has made the marketers even more clever, you know?
Yeah.
It got to, we look at the way, I don't know how cigarettes are handled over there, but you can't have cigarette commercials here in the United States anymore.
Same.
And for a long time, right, there was a big deal about Joe Camel. And Joe Camel, the cigarette guy, made to appeal to children. Are made to appeal to young adults. It's a camel with a leather jacket on and these sunglasses, walking around smoking, you know? So while we're not telling people go smoke, we are associating images of coolness. Now there's a whole media behind it because there's money behind it. I mean, they realize that if we get you to drink this in your movie, we'll pay you. And then the writers make it great because that's what they do. They're writers and directors. And so people go, oh man, that looks like a great time. Let me emulate that.
Yeah,
right?
I think you're totally right. It's a lot more subversive when you see it delivered through the culture in that kind of a manner. And that to me, that almost below the line delivery through popular culture rather than the sort of top down, above the line rhetoric from the advertisers direct is where it appears to come from. But I can also see, as someone who's interested in creative pursuits, I can also see that if you cast The Hangover but you get rid of the drinking, or if you have like a bad boy biker hero in some film but he's having like a vegan smoothie before he goes to like shoot someone, it kind of loses its edge a little bit. Like there's a role that alcohol needs to play in popular culture, and unfortunately, again, we're kind of stuck in this echo chamber where there's nothing else that can fit it. You know, it changes the character. If you take him from saying, well, this particular character who has lost his family and is on a path of revenge is drinking heavily every night and then waking up in the morning to go and try and gun people down. If you swap that for that same guy's microdosing LSD or like smoking weed or taking fucking CBD tinctures or something. Like the dynamic changes too much and it destroys the story. So there's culpable deniability on the side, and also I think genuine deniability on the side of the people that are writing these rhetorics in. But it's a vicious circle because unless you can step in at some point, that's never going to stop.
Yeah, and so we already know what happened. This country probably ran one of the best natural experiments in history, destructive, but one of the best. We know what happens when you ban alcohol. We witnessed that. We had the 18th Amendment and then the 21st Amendment. It was that bad that it got put into an amendment. And it's the only reason why we know people like Al Capone are. The only reason. So we're not going to ban it, and there's too much money involved, and it's going to continue to subvert culture as a result. So the best thing you can do is, I'm a big believer in the top down, from the generation and working with your kids and showing them a good way to live. I have a unique perspective because, I grew up around a mom that drank a lot, and a dad, he didn't drink that much, but I actually have no idea how much he drank. I wasn't around him that much, but alcohol was very much a part of my life growing up. But not so much in my girlfriend's life. And it's so interesting to see little things like she'll have a glass of wine. And when I say she'll have a glass of wine, I mean she'll have a few sips from a glass and then it'll sit there until I clean it. And I'm like, and I look at it and go, how can you not finish that? That's weird. Yeah. And it's because, she grew up in a household where they promoted different values, and there wasn't this kind of consumerist excessiveness. And certainly there wasn't much alcohol. I mean, what it's going to come down to, if we're going to do anything about this situation, and first people got to see it's a situation, which I don't think they're ever going to do
100%
en masse. But if they did see it, then the only solution, the one that will not result in a large, severe negative externality and reaction like the days of prohibition, is that it's got to start at home with the families, man. It's got to start with how you raise your children and what you show them and how you develop their abilities and discipline and confidence, all those good things. But we're horrible. We that's not going to happen. It's probably, I haven't been to a college party in man, since I was maybe 26, I don't know, 26, 25. So I don't know how bad or how crazy the campus has gotten. All I see are the extreme news stories when they hit. And, that's like the airplane crash effect, or availability heuristic, I think is the official name. Yep. So I don't know how bad it really is. But if I had to take an educated guess based on what I can see and the ears I have kind of at that level, it's certainly no better than when I was in my 20s, easily worse. And now with social media, man, everybody wants to be a star. Everyone wants to tag a brand. Everyone wants to show off. And, when we were, I don't know, how old are you? I'm
30.
Okay, so you're about, I'm 33. So you're roughly the same era. When we were assholes, and then you could forget about it unless you were a really, really big one, like you went to jail or something.
Yep.
And then later on, kind of, you probably were a little more in this than I was. I sent my fair share of drunk texts, but that was later into my drinking, 24, 25. Now, though, man, you're a fool, man. It's out there. And not only, but it's not treated the way it should be treated.
Yeah.
People don't, but no one looks at themselves next morning and go, oh my God, I've got to stop. They go, holy shit, like you said, that was awesome.
I mean, the thing that everyone needs to remember is that you are only ever one email away from TMZ or World Star Hip Hop.
Yep.
That's it. One email, and a couple of million people see what you got up to last night. So you're totally right. The external accountability and the stakes have been raised an awful lot more because of the level of connectivity that the world's got. That, what you or me would have had to have done 12 years ago to have made the news, that would have reached people. It would have had to have been a Armageddon level drinking escapade. But now, you can reach an equal number of people that probably the mainstream news reaches with a viral video. Like we've all got a
Right.
friend. We've all got a friend that randomly their cat did something funny and got its head stuck in a piece of bread. Or do you know what I mean? Like the fact that you can reach that volume of people is obviously it's a platform, but it on the flip side of that, it's also a real concern. So on the topic of the platform of social media, we're going to move on to your thoughts on Twitter, which I'm super excited to get into. But I've got one thing that I wanted to bookend the conversation with alcohol about. Actually, two things. Firstly, if someone was considering taking a stint of sobriety to see how they got on, have you got any first step tips that you would give them to aid them moving through that sort of initial period, that transition phase?
Man, you two things. One, you're gonna have to just spend time with different people. I've gone back and forth about this in my mind over the past 5 years, and ultimately, if you're serious and you want to try a different lifestyle, you're not gonna get support from the people who are still in said lifestyle. It's not gonna happen. People aren't designed that way. Your existence and your action will force a type of reflection that people aren't ready to make. I think the biggest mistake I made when getting sober was asking my friends what they thought. Of course, they're drinking with me. They're not going to admit that we're all. I mean, very rarely they're going to go, you know what? We all are fucked up. We need to, no, that doesn't happen. No, right? So if you want to get sober, man, if you want to try it out, you're going to have to just accept that your friend group for a moment ain't your friends. Go do something else. Make a new group. Have some fun. Explore yourself. And that leads me to the other thing. You got to immerse yourself in a task that demands energy, because it's very easy to say, I worked very hard today, I'm going to go out and have a drink. I actually did have that thought quite a bit. But when you're exhausted from working on stuff, plus, you got promises and commitments, but really when you're exhausted, even if you tell yourself, when you tell yourself it's temporary, it's very easy to just go, okay, it's over, right? Like, I mean, I didn't give myself a temporary out. It was just, all right, I'm done. But if someone wanted to try it and see how it would adapt, how they went with it, they need to be busy. They really need to be busy. Otherwise, it's going to be very easy to say, oh, I did really well today. I'm going to celebrate with a drink.
Yeah, or I had a bad day, and
Right.
I'm gonna use it as an anesthetic, or as a pill, or as the equivalent of something to dampen that mood down, I suppose. Which again, I like the idea of having a newfound purpose and something to put that energy into. That it's a reason to get yourself up in the morning, and it's also a reason to put yourself to bed at night without having had a drink. If you know that you got to get up and you got to perform the next day in whatever value it is that you've chosen is worthwhile, if you know that you need to do that, then you don't want to drink the night before, because you want to be fresh, because you're excited about performing to the best of your ability the next day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the final thing I wanted to touch on was I had a discussion with Michael Cazayoux, who is the CEO of Brute Strength. Now, Michael took his first drink of alcohol when he was 9 years old, had a very heavy substance abuse to Class A drugs and alcohol by the age of 14, was in and out of rehab, and then went on to become the fittest man in the world 2 years in a row at the CrossFit Games as part of the Affiliate Cup. Now he owns probably the biggest CrossFit programming company on the planet, which is Brute Strength. And I talked to him about his thoughts on sobriety, and it was very interesting to hear that what he said, or one of the things that he touched on, was that he feels like beating an addiction or beating a dependency isn't simply no longer taking the substance. It's the ability to reintroduce that substance on your terms. Now, I've spoken to Dominic McGregor, who's the COO of Social Chain, which is UK's largest and probably the world's largest social media agency. Also had some pretty big substance problems that came on much later in life, much more recently, and now he's in his about 2 years clean, I think, from all of those. And he didn't fully agree. He felt that you can have control over the substance by still not letting it in. But I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are on that the reintroduction of the substance on your terms is tantamount
to... Nah, man. Here's what I'll say. No one decides to get sober because they had a great experience most of the time and they had a few bad ones, right? That's just a regular night of drinking and learning your limits. Nah, man. My thoughts are this. Once, I always say, here's what I always say. I say, as far as my privilege of alcohol is concerned, I lost that privilege in this life. That and I want to keep it that way. You have to leave it behind. You make that decision because that bad things happen. And you got to remember, it's not even so much a situation of excess. I always say, look, if you start doing dumb shit under the influence, then the alcohol is working. There's no minimum effective dosage or anything. We like to tell ourselves that, but we got to remember, we're still at the end of the day ingesting something that's supposed to alter the way we think and alter our judgment. I don't think if you realize that you cannot do that to the point where you have to commit yourself to a program or you have to make a vow of never touching it, there is no reintroduction to that. Like,
Yeah.
I 100% flat out disagree, because if you get to the point where you feel like you need to quit, then you don't have control. There's no control over it. What I will say to that though is, if you scale back, if you think, like I was saying earlier, I'm not sure if I had a pure addiction or not. What I knew is that it was severely affecting me, and no more. I don't want those effects. Now, if I made it and I was the man and I decided to go have a drink, what does that do? Is it good or bad? But at some point, it depends on the level of commitment. How committed are you to it?
And also, I suppose as well, how much of a problem is it? Because, for me, alcohol or sobriety, the removal and the abstinence of alcohol, for me, is more a tool for productivity. I've never had a dependency. Very fortunately, I'm around a lot of friends that have been touched by that kind of a problem, but for me, that's never been the case. So when I'm looking at my sobriety in particular, I can see it a lot more through the eyes of someone that's elective rather than necessitative, if that makes sense. It's not a necessity for me to do it. It's me choosing to do it. In the same way as someone saying, okay, I'm going to make sure I get 8 hours sleep a night, or okay, I'm going to make sure that I eat 5 bits of fruit and vegetables a day, or whatever it might be. So I think that maybe on that side, there's a number of different sort of unique approaches, but I think what's interesting is that a lot of people will be suffering a net negative from alcohol consumption, but may not be doing it that regularly. May not, you could go through your entire life netting a negative from alcohol, but never actually having anything go that wrong.
Right.
You just end up damaging your health. You waste a bit of time. You kind of don't really develop any passions that are outside of drinking. Your weekends get wasted. And before you know it, you're 60. And you're like...
Yeah, and for some people here, and that's another thing. That's why I find it really interesting that particular guy said that, because that's really interesting to me. My personality was such that, or rather is such that I just wanted more for my life, and now at this point I think I couldn't imagine what I would get from it. I mean, I think I'm the coolest person most people are ever going to meet, and I know that alcohol makes me less cool. I'm not as sharp, I'm not as interesting, I'm not as controlled, and so it comes down to the image that I've kind of learned to develop of myself, independent of the substance. So I wouldn't even have, and I'm sure my argument is filtered through that, but I wouldn't even have a desire at this point to drink again. Like what would I get out of it?
Man, I couldn't agree more. So I announced a little Facebook status. I kept my sobriety stints quite quiet for the first 2, but did a little bit of a song and dance about it, because I know that it kind of does inspire other people, or at least make them think about drinking. And I was interested to hear people's responses, and someone asked me for the reasons why I wasn't drinking anymore, and the number one reason, the very, very top reason that I had, was I have nothing left to learn from alcohol.
Right.
Like there is nothing left that the substance has to teach me. And it's like, if you read a book so much that you knew it verbatim, reading the book kind of defeats the object. It's like I know the pages, I know the fonts, I understand where this bit's creased, I understand what it feels like when I get to the end and when I start at the beginning. Like, move on to a new book with regards to that.
Yeah, it's a new phase. I mean, you're right. I mean, in that regard too, maybe that's what I needed to put the book down was that period, because now it's just, I look at that period of my life like, man, I wasted so much time. I learned some lessons, but mostly wasted time. Right now it's down. Let's get on with it and get on, and be productive, do some cool stuff.
Yeah, I think what's to kind of finish on that, what's super interesting is that you've talked about the fact that being sober makes you a more interesting person, which is so counter to what most people would perceive.
Oh yeah, because
on your blog at the moment, haven't you got something about like how to be fun whilst being sober?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's to the point like I have just such a good, strong, extroverted personality. There's no other way around it. I'm just already outgoing and already interested in life, so I don't need it. I don't need it anymore, and so I try to build a life independent of it.
Yep.
And I have a great time with it.
Well, it's nice to see that someone who is accomplished and is getting things done. I think one of the main things that we need to do, if we are going to kind of open up people's eyes to the topic of sobriety for elective sobriety, almost we could call it, as opposed to kind of necessitative sobriety. One of the things that we're going to have to do is have people who are who are aspirational role models. You don't want to see some guy who's hooked up to a machine with jaundice and fucking liver failure and go, well, look at this guy, he went sober and it saved his life. And you're like, right, yeah, but first off, I don't want to be in the situation that guy is in. And secondly, I'm not in the situation that he was in. So it's just, there's too much of a gap for people to leap there cognitively. So, hopefully this will have opened some people's eyes. I want to move on to Twitter and your relationship with Twitter. Would you be able to explain to the listeners what your thoughts are on Twitter, please?
Oh man, I think Twitter is like magic. I don't know. I have this thing I've been thinking about lately, which is that the world we live in today is so far advanced that you couldn't even, if you were a writer in like say 1900s, you couldn't even imagine what your science fiction wouldn't create this because you couldn't see this at all, even in your imagination. It's just so crazy. And Twitter is one of those things, man. I say a thing, I put a thought out, and people share the thought, and then those people share the thought, and you can spread a message around the world. And in under 30 minutes. I mean, it's faster than any method of propagation because of the way they set it up. It's just one giant, growing, self-sustaining, Metcalf law-abiding network, and it is just cool. I love it. I've spent a lot of time and energy figuring out how to maximize the use of this platform, and I think it shows. And the follower count and the engagement and now the living I make off of it, I think it's just the best thing ever. And if Twitter goes away, somebody will come up with something, because this idea of sharing across barriers, like you don't have to follow me to see what I say, but if you like what I say, you can follow me. No other platform structured that way. It just isn't. I mean, I write about this. I got a new book coming out and a course along with it afterwards, where I talk about this exact thing that makes Twitter so powerful, that you can share ideas. No other platform lets you do that. And in sharing ideas, you can motivate, you can inspire, you can draw people in, you can antagonize, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
I mean, well, you can't do whatever you want, because they've
got terms of service. Yeah, exactly.
Right, but my thought about the terms of service, I mean, people complain about, sensitivity and you can't say this because of censorship. And that's never been an issue for me because that's not why I would want to use something that's powerful. You know what I mean? Like that's really how I feel about it. I'm not saying people should be restricted from saying whatever they want to. What I'm saying is that why would I spend my time on this platform just, shit posting and trolling? It's so much more than that. If I want to do that, I take it over to Facebook and bother some people, Here we have I'm sitting here, and probably the reason you know about me and so many other people know about me is because I have thoughts and I understand how to craft them, and I just put them out. I press a button, and then I can amass a group of people around me. I'm not interested in violating the terms of service because that's not my stick. I'm not a shock doctor. I'm not. I don't talk about. I don't even talk about politics, man. I hate politics personally.
Yeah,
it's just it's a very powerful tool. It's like the way I see the Twitter CEO, in these bands and putting these words in. I'm just this is not my emo. Like, I don't think Jack is doing a good or bad job. I think time will tell. But what I do know is that this is a very powerful technology, probably more powerful than most people realize, because behind any machine are people, and this is the ultimate tool for connecting and finding people. So what I think he's doing is trying to be a guardian of the new magic before we abuse it and like lose it.
Yeah.
That's the analogy I would go with. Now, whether he's making the best decisions on guarding it is a different debate, but I think that's how he sees his role. Maybe not consciously, but he certainly understands that he is the steward of a thing that can, and will change the world. It's changed individual lives, which means as a collective, it's going to change large groups and change the world.
Absolutely. So you touched on that you'd come up with some effective strategies for Twitter. Would you be able to lay out some key elements of that framework for the listeners who might want to think about growing their Twitter following or look at some principles on what's most effective?
Right. Above all things, man, you have to give people a reason to want to see your words. Because at the end of the day, that's all it means. Like right now, I'm looking at my screen. That's 62.1K underneath my followers. All that means is that I've given that many people a reason to follow and listen to me. I've provided value. I've given them something that helps them, something that they didn't know, something that helps them, makes them feel a certain way or think a certain way that they find favorable. At the end of the day, if you want to grow, you have to give value. And I can't stress that enough. Many people, when they start out on this platform, they don't realize that if you want, it's like real life. If you want people to follow you, you give them a reason. Why should you be my leader? Well, that's why they call it followers, right? But
that's a good point.
If we want to look at that, right? Why should we let you lead us? What have you done? What do you say? What have you shown to be to separate you from the rest of these other jokers out here who are putting up pictures of women and cats and trolling and stuff like that? Yeah. What do you bring to the table?
Yeah.
So that's the number one thing. Number two thing is you have to get people to see that you add value, and the only way to do that, I've grown my following from scratch, and I did that. I didn't ask anybody to follow me. I didn't pay for play, nothing like that, right? This all is a real people, and the engagement shows. I do about 25 million impressions a month. Let me tell you, I started like every other account starts, and I grew because I identified people that I already looked up to and liked, and then the people who were already following them, I followed a few of them, and they were saying something good, and then I would quote tweet whatever they, things that they say and add value to it. When you do that, they see that you did it first, and then they can decide if it's worth retweeting or not. And then as they retweet it, assuming you have added some great value, then other people are going to see it. and then it just grows and grows. I have an article, How to Grow Your Twitter Following, and I got a screenshot. I don't even remember the program I used or the website that showed the growth of my following from beginning to now, plotted on a time to follower graph, and you can see it's a nice exponential curve. The way you would think it looks. It starts out growing slow, and then it gradually gets a steeper and steeper slope. All right. And so now I'm gaining about 2,000 followers a month. I was on a streak for 11 months where I gained at least 2,000 followers, and I haven't gained less than 1,500 followers in a month. I haven't gained less than that in probably over 2 years. I'd have to go back and see, and it will be quite some time. So, and the basic strategy is the same: add value, give people a reason to follow you, make them think about the thing, make them feel a certain thing, highlight a part about life or your life, take from your experiences and what you've learned and repackage it and put it out there. There's so many different places to get lessons that you should not run out of. You should not run out of ways to add value. Really, realistically, the only limitation you're going to have is like, who's presenting your information to their network, right? Which means at the beginning you got to follow more people, not more, but you got to follow a decent amount of people. You got to follow more people than follows you, and then they put your stuff out and they go, "Oh, this guy says some things. Let's go follow him."
Yep.
And then they keep tweeting out, and then you just keep growing and growing and growing. I mean, and it's really beautiful, man. If you do it right, you'll just keep sprouting up. I mean, next year this time, I'm on pace to have a little under 140,000 followers. That is not insignificant because
it's a good platform, man. You enable yourself to reach an awful lot of people. I think what's cool there is what's accurate there is the fact that you've focused on the fact that you need to add value. And I think what people need to, or what people want to hear is, well, this is the golden ratio of following to unfollowing, or that all that you need to do is X, Y, and Z. But obviously the whole point is to come up with content which is engaging and which resonates with people. And that requires you to actually think quite hard and be creative and be original with stuff, and add your own flex. That's not an easy thing to write down on a piece of paper.
You know, there's all kinds. When you look at influencers and ways to grow Twitter, I mean, people don't like that. No one really writes about it in the mainstream because it's not easy. It is the hardest platform to grow on because you are judged. I mean, let this be, a commentary on the minds of humanity, however you want to take it. You are judged by the caliber of your words. And, first and foremost, now there's other things behind that I think are equally as important, are very close, particularly the image you put forth in your authenticity. Like, I always say I'm the most undoxable man on the internet. You can literally go look up my address if you wanted to with the boxing commission. And I regularly give it to people if they want to mail me stuff. I'm not, you can't do anything to me doxing wise that's not going to get you in prison. Like, you go get my social security number or my credit card. Yeah, you're going to jail for that though. But everything else, I'm just not worried about that. And that is the authenticity I put forth behind the platform, which I know works to my advantage. People feel like they can talk to me, and then whenever I have a chance, so if I'm in the city and someone says, "Hey, I see you're here, would you like to meet up?" I always take the opportunity because I'm very grateful, because when you can reach this many people, it's impossible to be broke. I mean, you really have to try. Like, I'm not saying you got a ball out of control. I'm certainly not. I mean, I make a modest living, but do you know how difficult? Well, how does a business survive? It sells things, and what does it sell? Things to people, and so it needs to market and advertise. I have an incredibly powerful organic platform. Plus, I only give out things that are valuable. I built up so much trust, only discussing things that are valuable and writing things that help people. That if when I create a thing, it's not really an issue. Like, I don't even. I mean, It's to the point, guys have said, like, dude, you make a killing with the paid ads, and guys are always trying to get me to to affiliate and promote a thing, and I have to be very, very selective, because what they don't understand is that the moment I affiliate something, I'm putting my authenticity and reputation on the line. If you have a garbage product, not only are you not going to make any money from that, I'm going to look bad for, I'm trying to fleece people. You know, there's always going to be people who have a problem with you making money. That is weird as that is, but I don't want to give those people fuel. And plus I don't want to fleece anyone in the first place. I don't want to promote a shoddy product. I turn down way more things than I promote, and I only promote I only promote like 3 things. 4 occasionally when a buddy of mine drops something in it, because it would change my life. I use it to change my life. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but yeah, aside from all the technical stuff, which we could get into, that I am going to put together in my upcoming book and course that I'm working on, about, you know, how to write and how to structure things and different ways to weight the words and take your experience and transmute it to a highly engaging tweet. At the end of it all, if you do nothing else, you can make a lot of mistakes in your formatting, your word balance, your word choice, but if you deliver value, you'll grow. You may not grow as fast as if you make the tweet perfectly balanced or avoid repetition of words, but you will grow.
I think that's a good way to put it, that focusing on the small stuff or sweating the small stuff is a surefire way to actually not get yourself off the ground. I like what you said about not compromising and not doing, not choosing to affiliate yourself with products that you don't fully believe in. That's the same for myself. We have a series that all of the listeners will know, which is Life Hacks. And as a part of that is we're not affiliated with anything that we ever feature. And we're just completely transparent about websites or apps or approaches or techniques or products that assist us in our life, and it's stuff that we actually use, and sometimes we'll use it for a bit and then get rid of it, and do you know, but it's genuinely, it's a manifestation of a solution to a problem that we have found. And I think Farnham Street, which is one of my favorite blogs,
I love that blog.
Shane Parrish is a absolute animal. Any of the listeners who want something to read,
he actually had me on he flew down from Toronto for one day, recorded, and then flew back. I was
he's a monster. So is that out on the Knowledge Project yet?
Yeah. It's been out for a little while, about a year, maybe a little less.
Fantastic. Well, I'll make sure that I put the link to that in the show notes below as well. But there's a really cool Medium article by Herbert Liu, which says why Farnham Street optimizes for loyalty, not page views, and that playing the long game, which Shane talks about so much, and focusing on adding as much value as he can. It's such a undervalued way of getting to the top, because everyone wants the same as, you know, you were talking before we came on air about how you'd just gone to the gym and you'd hit the heavy bag or whatever. You know, people don't want to have to go to the gym and hit the heavy bag. They want the 5-minute abs workout at home, right, and the pill that gives it to them. And in exactly the same way, as this is why I think one of the major attractions of reality TV at the moment is that it gets people from no platform to huge platform without actually having to cultivate any added value in the interim. You don't have to craft a character or prove any sort of worth. All you have to do is exist, and as a byproduct of that, people are interested in your existence. So, you know, operating and optimizing for loyalty and not page views is a surefire way to get yourself a tribe that will follow you. I think what's cool now is we're starting to see things stratify out into different sorts of media. So, you know, if you're good on video, then you go to YouTube. And if you're good with words and short form bits of kind of maxims and aphorisms and that sort of stuff, then you go to Twitter. And if you're good with imagery, or you're, you know, a good looking guy or a good looking girl, or you have the nice mise en scène, or however it is, then you go to Instagram. You understand what I mean? So these mediums are now, you don't have to be a jack of all trades. You know, most people have got one of each, or at least 2 of the 3 big platforms. But if you're very, very successful, if you're good with words and you can articulate yourself well, then, you know, go on Twitter or start a podcast. if you find that you're particularly good, if you're ridiculously really, really, really good looking, then you can go on Instagram, or if you're a photographer, you go on Instagram, etc., etc. So it's nice that you've found yourself, you've crafted an arena for you where you're surrounded by people. I mean, Shane Parrish, like if you follow Shane Parrish, Nicholas Taleb, Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, Shapiro, if you follow a group of guys like them and yourself, the volume of wisdom that you're getting hit with, it's in the fucking PSIs, isn't it? It's like a 16 bar pressure of wisdom that's just coming at you on a daily basis. And you don't need to look online. If you had Twitter and Medium, I reckon that you'd probably be able to grow yourself into an absolute monster of an intellect in no time at all.
Oh, absolutely. Because they add value.
Yeah.
They're always adding value. So there's never a dull moment between, you can get on. I really love Farnham Street as a result of seeing Talib on Twitter. I picked up his books, and I'm loving his books. So that's what it is. I mean, but think about this. This is what I always point out too. One of the things that really helps you grow is life experience. And, the more you've experienced outside of Twitter, the more likely people are going to follow you. It's like, you can't get famous from social media. That's not, we don't want to play that game, right? What we want to do is we want to go and develop ourselves and have a lot built up and a lot to say, and then come and deliver valuable perspectives on it, or just in life in general. I mean, I know I'm the beneficiary of the halo effect. People go, oh, this guy, he boxed professionally and he got a physics degree and he wrote some books. Oh, we got to follow him, and it looks better. I mean, at the very least, people aren't gonna go, what are you doing here? Wow, who cares about you? It's like, well, I'm here because I earned it. Why are you here?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think what's cool there is saying that you shouldn't aim to get famous through social media, that the fame should come as a byproduct, is exactly the same as saying your body should not be the purpose of your training routine. It should be a byproduct of it. You should train hard, you should do what you like to do, and you should put in the time and the effort. And then when you look in the mirror, it shows. If you reverse it and you aim for the top of the mountain, then you get lost along the way. There's this a really cool quote that you talked there about why should people listen to you, and everyone wants to be able to expedite their route to success, right? They want to be able to, where's the shortcut? What's the Ed Latimore's 5 quick tips for Twitter success? They don't want to hear that you need to tweet. I mean, am I right in thinking you do like 1,000 tweets a month, something like that?
More between 1,000 and 1,500 is generally where I fall.
So I mean, that's fucking terrible. That's like 30 to 40 a day. That's a massive volume. People don't want to know that they have to put that work in. But for people to talk about why should they listen to you? There's a quote by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, which says, all truly wise thoughts have already been thought 1,000 times, but to make them truly ours, we must think them over again honestly until they take root in our personal experience. And what I think this refers to is the fact that there isn't a shortcut to getting life experience. Like, without context or buy-in, even the most enlightening concepts don't resonate. That's why your life doesn't change.
Right.
When you see one inspirational quote on Instagram, it needs to be part of a bigger narrative. It needs to be part of a bigger picture. And, seeing one out of context quote, it's not enough. It's immersing yourself in good content, like you say, people who add value, guys like yourself and Shane and Nick Taleb, and like those. The volume of I can't get over what I look at when I look at my Twitter feed. I actually unfollowed everybody on my Twitter, and I'm now following 30 people.
Awesome!
Which was, for me, it's just a much more curated news feed. A lot of the time, what my friends are putting on there, that it's retweets. Like my friends that are my real friends, I have them on Facebook, and that's great. But what they put on Facebook is usually stuff that's actually meaningful. I bought a new house. I've got a new car. Me and the missus are getting married. What they posted on Twitter was just like drop, like fucking absolute. It was just dissolving my brain, because I think for a lot of people, Twitter's kind of the last thought at the bottom of the rung for many people, because it's a little bit more nuanced, and the fact you've only got a limited number of characters means that you kind of need to work a bit harder as well. So yeah, man. I mean, I am sorry to my friends that I unfollowed, but I've got you on. I've got you on Facebook for a good reason. But you were posting shit, and I also post shit, but you don't need to follow me. So, I've absolutely loved today, Ed. You've got a number of projects on at the moment. Tell us the timeline of what's coming up at the moment.
The big main, I guess, two big main things. One is my book about the transition to sobriety. I call it Sober Letters to My Drunk Self. And I wrote that. I mean, as the title suggests, I wrote it just a series of essays that I wish someone had wrote to me 5 years ago. And I put it together, and now we're really moving along, which is great. The last thing is I just got to get, I guess, two last things. I get the final file to upload to Amazon, and I got to go record the audiobook, because now I understand. I mean, more people just do the audio thing, and I'd be foolish to not do it that way, especially with this kind of book. So there's that, and I want to release that on my sobriety date, which is December 23rd. The other thing I have set to come out is I have an ebook on writing tweets, particularly, how to, it's called Engagement is the New Cocaine. I'm really, really excited about the cover. It's got that strong marketing look to it. I don't know if you've seen the cover floating around.
I haven't yet, no.
On the internet, but it's really cool. And I'm just going to be talking about how I think about writing, because what's happened is when you write this many tweets, I'm not sitting there crafting a perfect tweet every time. I just think in a certain way, due largely to the influence of the platform. And from there, I've reverse engineered, and I thought about it and looked at some things, and there are definite patterns. It's to the point now where I'm surprised when a certain tweet does not do well or does really well. But it's happened fewer and fewer. Like, I have a pretty good idea of like what is going to resonate and how it's going to resonate based on the topic and the way it's written. The way it looks is important. People don't realize that. So I'm putting all that together. I think people are going to get a lot out of it. And just like it's a bit of a marketing lesson here on the side. So I know what I'm going to initially price it at as part of a deal with a guy I'm working with. It's going to be $25, right? I'll probably pop it up to like 37 or 42 or whatever those weird numbers are. But think about this for a minute. I have 62.1 thousand followers. If I get 2% of them to buy that, then I've made more than, and the advertising is built in. I have that many people. Obviously, I know what I'm doing, and that's just the kind of thing that happens when you build a respectable following, and you've done it, and people are gonna see how I think about the platform aside from like whatever I make from it. What's way more important to me is that I just like sitting there crafting words. I'm very lucky that I was born when I was born, and this technology was created, because it really gives me the ability to craft a lifestyle and pursue the things that I think are important, which are, knowledge, self-development, health, and really giving something back to people. What good is my life if I accumulate all of this knowledge and I do nothing to pass it on?
Oh man, I couldn't agree more. I think that's a really lovely sentiment. The fact that all of our victories and all of our suffering they're made both greater and less painful by using them to allow people to avoid the pitfalls and to expedite the successes that we've already encountered.
Oh, absolutely. It's really just a cool thing, man. We have a great world. There's nothing to be sad about, man. Got to be happy.
I agree. Well, Ed, thank you very much. Would you be able to tell the listeners where they can find you online? I'll make sure it's in the show notes below, but let's get everything plugged now so I don't forget.
Oh yeah, my website is where I write my long form essays. That's just edlatimore.com. And my Twitter is the same, where we were just talking about. I put a lot of good stuff out there, I think, and that's Ed Latimore. My Twitter is at Ed Latimore.
Fantastic. Well, Ed, it's been absolutely brilliant. Good luck with your final month. You've got just about 4 weeks to make sure that everything's finished and ready for Amazon. So I wish you the best of luck in getting all of that completed. And then once the Twitter course is out, make sure that you give me a message, and I'll make sure I fire it out to all of the listeners as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, man. Catch you later on.
Yeah, yeah.